All right, we're back. Episode number 69 of the Daru Strong Podcast. I'm your host, Phil Daru. Today, we have two-time world champion boxer Paulie Malignaggi on the podcast today. He's been in the gym recently getting ready for his upcoming celebrity boxing match with a TikToker. But I'm going to tell you right now, he is definitely ready to put on a show. And we are going to talk a little bit about that, plus past fights and his start and come up in the sport of boxing. So stay tuned. But before we do that, I have to shout out the sponsors, vivobarefoot.com. Check out Vivo Barefoot. Those are the minimalistic shoes that I've been rocking along with all of my athletes and coaches. It is a minimalistic shoe to help with full foot functionality. If you want to strengthen your feet and you also want to look a little bit stylish, trust me, you want to check them out. So to use my discount code, all you have to do is press Daru Strong at your final purchase. Get 10% off on that. So make sure you go ahead and do that. That's vivobarefoot.com. If you are a coach looking to learn some of the methods, some of the protocols, the systems that I use for my athletes, and some of the coaches that have been successfully using some of the methods that I've been able to put together for the past 10 to 12 years of coaching, check out my mentorship program, darustrong.com. It's a one-time fee and you'll get access for life. Also, if you are someone who wants to train the programs that I've written out, again, you can go to my website, darustrong.com, and check out all the programs that I have available for you. Before we go on with this great conversation, I want to make sure that I announce the first ever Daru Strong conference that's going down December 11th through the 12th, right? We have a star-studded list of coaches and entrepreneurs that are going to talk at this summit, at this conference. So make sure that you attend. If you want to find out more details, you can go to darustrong.com and find out how to purchase your tickets. It is at the end of the year, but tickets are going fast, so make sure you get on it, and I'll see you there.
Welcome to the Daru Strong Podcast. Daru Strong Podcast. Let's go. Mind over matter. Put your mind somewhere else and keep going. That little voice in your head is trying to stop you from getting to where you want to be. Be successful and keep moving forward. With your host and world-renowned strength and conditioning coach, Phil Daru.
So, Paulie, thanks a lot for joining me, brother. I appreciate it, man.
It's my pleasure, man.
I appreciate your time, everything. Yeah. So I see you in the gym a couple days now. So what's going on? What are we doing?
Well, we're getting ready for this celebrity boxing event I'm doing this weekend. Just putting on the final touches. I was in New York for most of the summer. Yeah. And honestly, I got to be honest, this has not been the kind of training that what I've done in the past, where it's like I'm fully focused and I'm gung ho about it, and fully making weight. We got to have a respectable weight, and we just got to put on a respectable show. And celebrity boxing is more of a I wouldn't say gimmicky, but it feels gimmicky, character based, a little bit WWE-ish, with with people, with influencers and people with followers. It's interesting because that's kind of the way it's going now. And then people are talking to me like, "Oh, Paul, you got to end this whole influencer thing. You got to go beat this guy up, make a statement, and it's going to end." I mean, even if I go beat him up, I don't think that most of them are going to be, dumb enough to go bother boxers and fighters. They're going to just bother each other, Yeah. And I kind of view it like this. I kind of view it where if you're in high school and a popular kid gets into a fight with another popular kid and they're supposed to fight after school, and they're both popular kids, the whole school's going to be outside want to watch the fight because the popular kids fight each other. It's oh man, everybody's talking about it. It doesn't even matter if they know how to fight. Yeah. They're just the two popular kids. True. They got into a beef, and now we got to go. Well, after school, it's going down. So I feel like this is kind of a similar situation, but as in adulthood, where you've got professional fighters, and it's professional fighting is having a hard time generating the kind of views that celebrity boxing or influencer boxing gets, because people don't care about the ability of the fighter. They care about, we're in that kind of generation where now high school is kind of transcended into adulthood. Yep. People just care about the popularity of the person, of the people. Yep. So if you have two popular enough people, they may not even be able to spell fight, but if they're fighting, people are going to watch, And so I think, even if I make a statement on this guy this weekend, and I intend to, sort of drag him out and make him understand what it is a fight. Because if I take him out in the first round, I'm putting him out of his misery, and he's not going to really understand what it is to be in a fight. Yeah. I feel like if I drag him out and make him, now you're in here, and you got to suffer, and you got to go through the whole, you got to drag this out. Yeah. And what are you going to do? Are you going to continue, or are you going to quit? What are you going to do? To me, that's what being a fighter is.
No, for sure.
Everybody's a fighter in one round, but are you a fighter when it drags and it's uncomfortable and it starts to get painful? And so that's sort of my intention, to make you understand, to make him understand what boxing is, what fighting is in general, because it's combat in general. But I still feel like, all right, these guys will just go bother each other. Sure. They won't go bother fighters.
So how many rounds, and what's the time?
I believe it's 6 rounds. Typically, they do like 3 rounds of like a minute and a half with the celebrities. But I think, and they put headgears on with celebrity boxing. But I think we're doing like a special case where, we're not wearing headgears, and we're gonna have a little bit longer of a fight.
Nice.
So it's legit. From what they told me, he's been training hard. So he's like, okay, you know what, make it look like, you know how to fight, because I know how to fight. You know what I mean? I may be older, but I still know how to fight. So we'll see.
Who's the kid? What's his name again?
His name's Corey B. He's got a good following. TikTok, big TikTok following, but he also does a morning radio show that is. Now these morning radio shows, they're in different markets. He's out of New York on 92.3 FM in New York, but the same radio station, same radio show, morning radio show, also is heard in Miami on 104.3 in the morning, 104.3 FM in Miami. And I think he's got a couple of other different markets as well. So these morning shows, they get a lot of different markets. So he's got a lot of popularity through the morning show, and he's in New York. He's funny enough. The irony is he's training where I started boxing, where I learned to box. That's what he's training now. And I'm training here. I think he's originally from Florida. It's funny because I'm in Florida and he's in New York, so funny, we both kind of switched our to where we originated from.
I have to ask my daughters if they know who the dude is, man.
Yeah, a lot of the younger people do. Probably, they know him. Yeah. When they tell me Corey B.
Corey B. All right, so let's go back, because I have a large amount of fight fans that listen to the podcast, but coaches too. Let's go back to the original, when you started, the origin story, right? And you probably haven't been able to do this in a while, so let's go over it, man. How'd you start off in boxing, and where'd you grow up, and where you're at now?
I'm born in South Brooklyn. It's considered, now it's a nice neighborhood. It's considered like Carroll Gardens, Washington Heights, Carroll Gardens area. Not Washington Heights, Carroll Gardens. It's like Carroll Gardens, right by the Brooklyn Bridge area. I was born in Long Island College Hospital in South Brooklyn, where it's not even, you got old when the hospital doesn't exist anymore, So that hospital is no longer there. But my family is from Bensonhurst, Brooklyn.
Okay.
My father played low-level professional soccer. So when I was born, he had gotten a contract to play in Mexico for the season, and my mom's parents had moved to the United States a couple of years before, in 1977. I'm born in 1980. So with my father getting a deal to go play in Mexico, my parents were like, let's go to the United States. The baby will be born in the United States, because at the time the whole freedom and your kid being born in America was a big deal. At that time it was a big deal. Now I don't know about now, but at that time it was a big deal. Nobody in my family had been born in the U.S. yet. So my mother was pregnant, my grandparents were here, her parents, and my father was like, you know what, let's go to America, we'll stay at your mom's house, and then I'll head to Mexico, and you'll stay by your mom's house in New York, and we'll have the baby in America. So that's what they did. They moved here in August 1980, and the season started in September for my father, and then we moved here in July or August, I don't know, but anyway, I wasn't around. So the season started in September. The season started in September, and then I was born in November. And my father played a season in Mexico, and they offered him my mother had recently told me they offered him a contract to stay there. They had offered him an apartment and a salary, and where basically, they said bring your wife and bring your kid, instead of keeping her in New York, and we'll sign you for a longer deal. But he wanted to go home. My father always had this thing about being homesick, he was. I feel like I had my father's athletic ability, but more discipline. My father had no discipline. You know what I'm saying? So he'd rather be comfortable than live his dream.
You get that from your mom, maybe?
I don't know. I got that. I feel like I get that from my mom's parents for sure. My grandfather was really a hard-nosed worker. He moved to the United States a couple years before that, like I said, and then he just went right to work. Like the old school immigrant generation. So I feel like I do get that mentality from my grandfather, my maternal grandfather. But a lot of the athleticism probably I got it from my father.
Gotcha. And you're Italian, though.
I'm fully Italian. 100% Sicilian.
So where'd your grandfather come from?
My grandfather was also a Sicilian, but he moved to U.S. in 1977. Nice. And my mother was going out with my father, so they just got married and were in Italy, you know.
Gotcha.
So my mother's the second of 5, so they still had younger kids when they came here.
Yeah.
So you know, my father decided now we're gonna go back to Italy, and he got a deal back in Italy, and so we moved back to Italy in July of '81. So I was not even a year old, you know.
Yeah.
So we moved back, and we stayed there until 1986 when my parents finally got separated, you know. And my father, you know, finished out his career. And we would come every summer because my father was off in the summers. Because in European soccer, the season goes from September to June, so you're off in the summer, you know.
Yep.
So we would come and visit my maternal grandparents every summer in New York. So I was familiar with New York, but I did not live in New York. You know,
You spoke Italian too.
I spoke only Italian. I didn't speak English because you know you come only in the summer and you're in an Italian neighborhood and you're a kid. You know, you just you know. So I did not speak English. But when I moved back here, when we moved here finally in fall of '86, I was almost 6 years old, and I had to learn. I had to learn English because I was going to go to school now, you know. And so went to class. But luckily at that time it was easier because there was a lot of kids that were Italian families from Italian families, so they could translate what the teacher was telling me and show the teacher. I remember put me next to a kid and he would translate for me what she was saying and whatnot. And I kind of you're grasping the language. You're 6 years old. You're going to grasp the language faster.
That's what I was going to say. Yeah,
and
it's easier when you're young.
And it's funny because me and him we're still friends. You know, well, I don't see him that much anymore, but you know, he's got his pride.
A long time ago. Yeah.
But it's funny because we're still friends all these years, you know.
For sure, that's cool.
So, but that was the story of how it all started. My mother got remarried. I had some trouble at home with her husband. We moved to Jersey we moved to Jersey when I was 9 years old, and then when I was 15, I got kicked out of my mom's house for not getting along well with her husband. You know, just growing pains and whatnot. Sure. You know, different situation. My father was gone. You know, it was just tougher situation. It's funny because I get along with him and my mom now, and they're still together. That's cool. You know, everybody grows up, and you know, you kind of learn to get along. You know.
So this is going to be a different question, but like, you know, I'm a stepfather myself. My daughters, they were younger when I started. When I was with got with their mother. As a teenager, especially a teenage boy, do you think that that's something that is very difficult for a teenage boy and a man that's coming into ultimately the household where you should be the man per se and you're protecting your mother? How hard is that as a kid?
You know, I didn't anticipate it to be a situation where I feel like I'm protecting somebody. When it first happened, I just felt like my mother's happy. You know, I had seen my mother be crying because my father just kind of just dipped, you know what I mean? So I had remembered my mother crying. I had remembered I would be crying for my father, you know, because I was old enough to know, you know, and understand what was going on, you know? So when my mother found somebody, I was happy for her. And I felt like, okay, you know, we're going to be a family, you know? This is how it goes, you know? Plus, my mother was doing things that probably emotionally, I guess women do, but she probably shouldn't have been doing. She always bad-mouthing my father, I guess, you know, putting her own personal, you know, agenda in there. But, you know, it made me have some regrets. And don't get me wrong, my father has some faults that definitely, you know, can't go without being said, you know, especially the whole dipping out thing. You know, he stayed in Italy, he brought us here, you know, because he knew, he tells me today, well, your grandparents were there and they could have given you a better life, you know, than if I would, but you're a world apart now, you know what I'm saying? So it is, I don't know, in the end, I feel like this. It worked out that I was raised in the United States because the opportunities came to me because I was in the United States. Absolutely. But so all's well that ends well. But in the moment, you know, I had a lot of resentment. My mother was telling me things. I was starting to see things that were not the fairy tale that I thought it would be when my mother first was going to get remarried. Gotcha. You know, he was a little bit abusive. He would hit my mother. He would hit us. So now you got a person in the house that you've never seen do these things to your mom. Because my father was not handsy. He was not a person that hit my mother. My father was more of a player, joking around kind of guy. He's always playing around. Women, a lot of women. He was an athlete, and I didn't understand the fights they were getting into because when you're a kid, you don't understand the whole cheating fights because you don't understand what that is, you know. But what you do understand when somebody starts hitting your mother, you do understand that, you know. So. And I hadn't seen that before. I never saw my father do it. So it did start to, you know, affect me, and it started to get physical in the house. Me and my brother would start, you know, get physical back. And,
how old was your brother?
My brother's 2 years younger than me.
Gotcha.
So, you know, we lost a lot of the battles at first, you know, but we were trying, you know. But it's me and my brother, and then my mother had a son and a daughter from her second husband, who I loved. You know, I saw them from the moment they were born, and, you know, they're my siblings to this day, and I love them, you know. But it was hard, you know, because now there's their father, you know, and so now it's really twisting things around, and you're sort of torn. You're living this confused life. And, you know, he moved us to a middle-class Jersey neighborhood, I remember. And it was a good neighborhood. I mean, Brooklyn was really bad at that time. So to get us out of Brooklyn, probably, I guess the intention was all good, and my mother probably liked it. But I remember two things. I really missed Brooklyn because everybody was like me in Brooklyn, in my neighborhood. You know, Italian culture, this and that. You know, I'm that Brooklyn, New York culture. Now all of a sudden I went to a place where, and I don't know if the suburbs like this now, but the suburbs at that time, 30 years ago, basically if you were different, you know, it was a little bit weird. Like, you know, my mother had an accent.
This is 95?
No, it was early 90s. It was like 91, 92, really? You know what I mean? Like, and then 95, I stayed. It ended in 96. I ended up going back to Brooklyn with my grandparents' house. But 91, 92, you know, it was like, you know, my mother got an accent. You know, I'm bringing Nutella sandwiches for lunch, and people like, you know, now everybody knows Nutella. Oh, yeah. but at that time, nobody knew what Nutella was. Really? Especially in the suburbs, people were like, what is that shit? You know, like, so, and I would like be offended. I'd be second guessing eating my Nutella sandwich. You know, so you know, it was funny. But
out, man.
I mean, now everybody knows Nutella. Nutella's global now, but at that time, it was only the Italians knew it. You know,
that's so funny.
So, you know, but the situation stayed tough at home, and finally, in the summer of 96, I got kicked out of my house, you know, and it was tough. I'm sure it was tough for my mother because it was a situation where now she's got 2 more kids, and she doesn't want to leave her husband and be left with 4 kids as a single mother. So she is
she had no job at this point, obviously.
No, I mean, she's not formally educated even in Italy. Southern Italy was always very poor, you know, which is why my grandparents came here. So you're going to work.
My grandmother's actually from Sicily.
Yeah, so exactly. So I'm Sicilian as well. So, you know, you're going to work early. Most of the time you're not finishing school, especially the women. I mean, the women are just staying home, and that's it. You're taking care of things, you know. And if you're the older women sibling, you know, even my grandmother, she's a second of 10. You're not going to school anymore. You're taking care of your younger siblings too. You're helping your mother in the house. So my mother was not formally educated, besides being somebody who didn't speak very good English. Now her English is better, but at the time she was not formally educated and she didn't speak English. So it was like a double whammy. Where was she going, you know?
Yeah.
So yeah, it was tough. I wound up back in Brooklyn. For me, I remember like I was happy to go back in Brooklyn. I was like, I don't care. I'm with my grandparents now. I'm happy. My grandparents, I remember, were mad at me though, because nobody knew like what was really going on in my mother's house, you know. So they were mad at me, like, you wrecking the house. Your father left, and this guy took over, and you had this thank you give him. And I'm just like, man, you don't know the whole story, you know. And I'm not gonna put my mother on blast like that, but you know.
That must have been tough though.
Oh, it was hard as hell. It was hard as hell because you feel like you don't have anybody to turn to.
Sure.
You know, there's nothing to turn to, and so what do? You just start acting out more and more and more.
Yeah.
You know, I went to high school in Brooklyn in the year 96, 97, and let me tell you something. High school and elementary school in Brooklyn. I left in junior high. Mm-hmm. Elementary school and high school in Brooklyn in the 80s and 90s is a major difference, bro.
Sure.
There's race lines, there's culture lines, there's everything. People are fighting. People, you know, you don't even know how to deal with it anymore, you know? Yeah. So I got thrown out of school the same year. I got expelled the same year. I got so many fights that they threw me out in May 97. So I almost got through the school year, but I was thrown out in May 97. Yeah. And my grandparents just were like, you know, they're older, bro. They raised their kids. They're just like, what are we doing with this kid, you know?
They're probably like, oh man, I can't handle this.
Yeah, you know, and then I remember my grandmother yelling at my mother like, this is your son, you're supposed to be taking care of him. And so it was a little bit tricky.
Sure.
And I wound up, my grandfather would take me to work with him on the construction site every day because he didn't want me. He's like, you're not going to go to school every day now because you're thrown out. You think you're going to hang out on the street all day long? That's not what's going to happen. You're going to come to the job site with me and you're going to hang out on the job site. And he would take me to the job site and tell me to sit on the side and not do anything. And I'm like, all right, that was cool for like a couple of days, you know. And I was like, I'll give you $10 a day. I'm like, it's kind of nothing, bro. I mean, granted, it's the 90s, it's a little more than now, but it's still nothing. I'm like, yo, why don't you teach me something, bro? He's like, no, you gotta sit over there. I'm like, he's like, what are you complaining about? You don't have to do anything. I'm like, but I'm wasting my whole day. I'm 16 years old. I don't want to be here. I want to hang out. I want to do something, you know?
Yeah.
And so my uncle said, take him to the boxing gym. My uncle had done some messed around with some boxing years earlier. Never competed or anything, but he realized the atmosphere of the gym might help me.
Yeah.
And my grandfather was apprehensive because at first, right around that time, a boxer in Italy had just died, you know, in the ring. So he's like, nah, I don't know, isn't that? And I'm like, yo, bro, I'll do anything to get me. Just don't stop taking me on these job sites every day, bro. I'll try this boxing shit, you know, like whatever, you know. Yeah. And I never ever applied myself to anything at that point in my life. I never had coaching. I was always good at sports, but I never even joined a team. Yeah. I never applied myself in school. I never applied myself to anything in my life. At that point, so
why is that though? Why do you think
I just was very undisciplined because I had no guidance, and that's not to make an excuse, but I had nobody teaching me the proper way. Like now, if I talk to a kid, I tell him, you know, having character is seeing a job through, you know, seeing things through, whether it's comfortable or not comfortable. If you commit to something, seeing it through. Getting through. Part of being a man in general, you know, is, you know, if you have responsibilities towards people you love,
100%.
You may not enjoy that ride, but what makes you happy and makes you smile is knowing when you put your head on the pillow at night that the people you love are handled and taken care of because you are doing this thing that may be uncomfortable for you, but you know what? You're handling it, you know? Gotcha. So I understand that now. And you know when I started understanding that? It's funny because my grandfather thought I had no character at that time. I probably didn't, and my uncle didn't. They finally just figured, you know what? I'm gonna bring him to the gym. They didn't think I was gonna become a fighter. They probably thought he's gonna get his ass kicked a bunch of times, and he's gonna want to quit. But it'll straighten him out a little bit, you know.
Yeah.
But I had noticed that year because I had slept on my grandmother's couch. I didn't have my own room in my grandparents' house. You know, the house was small, so I would just sleep on the couch. So my couch was right next to my grandparents' room. Yeah. So I remember seeing my grandfather wake up every day, 6 a.m. to go to the job site, construction site, because he owned the construction company. Yeah. And I have young grandparents. So at the time, my grandfather was in his mid-50s. So he was still working. And I remember every day, and I remember saying something to myself, you know, because every day I had to wake up, because he'd wake up and he'd make all kinds of noise, he didn't care. And I mean, I'm thinking like, he don't care. I mean, last night he was coughing, he was sick. I heard him in the bedroom, and he's up going to work today, you know what I mean? Or whatever, you know, like I knew when he was feeling good, when he wasn't feeling good. But every day, this fucking guy got up on point, you know what I mean? And he was up and heading to work every day. And my grandmother too, making him breakfast every morning, you know, and getting up with him. And it started to, I wouldn't say take an effect on me, but it started to leave a mark in my brain. Like this is a man. Sure. This is, you know, he sees things through. Yeah. You know what I mean? This is a guy who sees things through, you know, no matter what. You know, and I know some days he's not comfortable, and I know some days he's not feeling good. He sees things through. So take it now, it's when they started me boxing. We started boxing, and all of a sudden I like it. I like even the fact that I'm getting my ass kicked some days. I'm like, yo, I want to be back here. I want to kick this guy's ass tomorrow. You know what I mean? Like I want to come back, and I was getting better. I could feel my natural ability. You know, because everybody always thinks like fighting is fighting, but it's a sport. Yeah. So if you have natural athleticism, you can apply it in that sport in combat. It applies just like it applies in football, baseball, soccer, hockey, basketball, whatever. Athleticism applies in combat as well. But you don't typically think of that because you think about only the combat aspect of it. But all of a sudden I realized like my natural speed, my natural ability, I could apply it in what they're teaching me. And it's like, oh, it's getting good, you know? And all of a sudden I loved it, and all of a sudden I had a reason not to want to get in trouble because I didn't want to have this taken away from me.
You had the higher purpose.
Yeah, and all of a sudden I just, you know, put on these blinkers and blinders. I remember the first few months I was still messing around. Yeah. I remember me and my friends, a few months into me boxing, there was this kid that had messed around. I was kind of I wouldn't say we were a gang, but we were a crew, you know? Yeah. And I remember it was this kid that had messed with some kid's sister or something, I don't know, whatever. I don't remember the story now. We had to find him or something. Yeah. And we found this kid and beat him down bad. Him and the kid he was with, we found him. And I remember the next day, the police, this kid had a neck brace on, and the police were circling the school, and he came out of the police car with the neck brace. So I guess figuring like they'd see the kids that went after them in the school. And my grandparents lived across the street from the school. So I got kicked out of a school I was across the street from. So I remember getting ready to go to the gym and seeing this kid come out of the police car. See, right when I was coming out of that, so I would have been screwed. Like the time it couldn't have been worse, or maybe it couldn't have been better because they didn't see me, but I saw them. And I came out, and I'm like, oh. And I went back inside, and I'm looking through the window, and I'm like, oh man. And it just kind of, after that day, I was like, what am I doing, bro? Like, I just started this. I like it. Like, what am I doing, man? Like, screw these kids, man. You know what I mean? Like, yeah. And I just, I was boxing a few months then, and I just, like, that's it. That kind of just took me home. You know, that was the last realization I knew.
Now, were you competing at all, or were you just
Not yet. I boxed for 3 months at that time. I had not competed yet. I was sparring, but I had not competed yet. 3 months later, in December 1997, I went to my first professional boxing match. And it was, of all fights, Prince Asim Ahmed versus Kevin Kelly.
Wow.
And that was a monster night. That was a monster night. Ironically, Ricky Hatton was a 4-rounder on the undercard. A guy that I would fight at Las Vegas multi-million-dollar main event with 11 years later, and I would have no clue because I didn't even have an amateur fight yet.
That's so crazy.
And I watched him in a 4-rounder, and I watched Joan Guzman, who also became world champion in a 4-rounder. And then Hamed and Kevin Kelly, I went there to root for Kevin Kelly because he would train in my gym. He was a New Yorker, flesh and flesh. He had good style. Great fight. I mean, they both knocked each other down. The Prince knocked him out. But I remember the Prince, just the way he had the crowd, this aura in the crowd, his entrance and this and that. And I just remember thinking, this is pro boxing, man. Wow. I gotta do this. I've got that. That night I decided I've got to do this. You know, like I was loving everything, but not knowing where it was gonna take me. I was loving everything to that point, though. You know, this point, I loved that I was now had a goal in my mind. But that night I left Madison Square Garden. I took the subway. That night I left Madison Square Garden, and I said, I've got to do this. I've got to feel what they felt tonight. I've got to be. And ironically, that was December '97. June 2006, 8.5 years later, I made him out there in the same building against Miguel Cotto, you know? So it's funny. And like I said, 11 years later, I made him out in Las Vegas against Ricky Hatton, who I watched in a 4-rounder that night. So that night had so many little connections for me for what would become of my life, you know? Yeah.
Now, with Prince, like, did you see, like, his charisma in the ring and obviously going into the ring? Did that kind of carry? Like,
absolutely. I couldn't stand him that night, you know, because I was a big Kevin Kelly fan. You know, he was so cool in the gym. You know, like he was a world champion. It was so nice to everybody, and he was the first world champion I ever talked to. And I remember I was in the dressing room, which I was changing up. I just finished working out, and Kevin walked in. He was getting ready to change, and I was looking. I'm like, yo, that's Kevin Kelly, man. I'm like, wow. You know, I'd never seen a world champion live in my face like that before. You know. And he was like, he noticed me looking at him, and he was like, "What's up, bro? What are you doing?" And I'm like, "Nah, nothing, not much, champ, you know." And he's like, "What's your name?" And I'm like, you know, he just started talking to me, and I'm like, "Wow, that was so cool, man." You know, you never know what effect you have on a child, especially at that time in my life that I'm going through so much. You know what I'm saying? For me, it meant a lot. So all of a sudden, he's the guy I'm going to watch against the Prince, and the Prince had this huge hype machine behind them, you know, at that time. So I'm hardcore Kevin Kelly, and I didn't like the Prince, you know. But respectfully, after the fight, I just left. Said, "This is unbelievable. This next night was unbelievable." I was mad Kevin lost, and I was on the train just thinking, I've got to feel this. I've got to do this one day. I've got to feel this. I got to get to this level, you know. And then I was thinking, yo, this guy, the Prince, he just had the crowd eating at the palm of his hand, man. That was crazy. And I think that night I decided, like, if I'm gonna do this, I'm gonna do this in your face way, in a, you know, I've arrived kind of way. And it was always, I guess it was meant for me to be that way because I was always in the shadows. Like I was always like, you know, the underdog. Nobody understood me. I felt very misunderstood in my life. You know, it just, you know, not to make like the sob story, but for me, I always felt misunderstood because I was in situations where it was hard to understand what I was going through, and I had nobody to really explain it to. You know. But you know, and like you said, when you talk about the step family situation, I think it can be done right. I don't think it's easy though, because I think children and especially teenagers, you know, they have this know-it-all chip on their shoulders, right? Yep. And sometimes, you know, if you're not their blood telling them what to do, sometimes it gets tricky. Mm-hmm. You can only hope to teach them character, teach them about character, and live by example, right? Sure. And do the best you can living by example. Yeah. And one day, if they understand that, if this seeps in, one day they'll understand it. You know, I now understand something's got to be no. There has to be a no there. If you say yes to everything, you're creating a spoiled person that is not going to be ready for life. You may be able to buy every single toy for your kid, but if you buy every single toy that they ask for, when they're older, they're not going to be ready for life. Yeah. And you're going to create a jerk-off of an adult. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. So sometimes, you know, part of being a parent is making your kid understand there's a time for a yes and a time for a no. Or it's a no. But you know what? If you earn it, if you show me this, and this, I'll think about it.
Sure.
You know what I'm saying? And
that makes sense. You're kind of putting the work
but this is the experience of my life too. It's not, you don't. Not everybody necessarily knows that. Personally, me, I would not date somebody with kids because of the experience I went through, and I feel like it was bad. But I also feel like maybe some of that also could be on me. Could be maybe I wasn't giving a fair chance. I don't know. I mean, he didn't give himself a fair chance at the end of the day in that time, right? Like now we get along, cool. My mother stayed with him. We're adults. Everybody does their thing, whatever. Sure. And everybody's old, But I don't know. Like I can't dissect it because I've never been able to really talk to anybody. It's like I was always a person I couldn't talk about this. Like so it was like now I can talk about it freely, but I don't have the answers. I can just go through the experience of what was going on in my mind. And so it's like So I wouldn't want to be put in a situation where, where if I'm being bossy, am I being too aggressive? Am I being that asshole that I don't want to be? Or am I being too soft? And this kid's gonna be a jerk off. Like it's like because now now it's a balance, bro. Now it's a balance. And the world out there, is different than the world when we were younger. Discipline is like frowned upon now. Raising spoiled people is more like the logic, which is wild. So it's they're not exactly getting good coaching when they leave your house. Whereas before maybe we would have. Like I'll put it like this. I realized myself, watching my grandfather every single day, his example. He was living by example. He was teaching me by example, and he didn't realize it. But me, it took me and my brain. Even as a kid who was confused, lost, and whatever else was going on in my head, I still noticed that example. Yeah. It took me. So that means there was something in me that could understand that and appreciate that. You know what I'm saying? I don't know if everybody if that's natural. I don't know if that was just me. I don't know how that is,
Well, that's one thing that I'm always looking to do first and foremost is without saying is more doing. Yeah. And my girls see that. Obviously, I have a 7-year-old son too, as well as mine, and like he sees it all the time. And so his work ethic is, and his mother too. Like his mother, works hard too as well. Mm-hmm. She does what she needs to do, and we take care of each other, which is really good because now they see a team, right? Yeah, and that helps a lot. But I can understand that, and for me, it was more so like, man, should I be that? That authoritative, person. Yeah,
and there's a time for it, but it is a balance too. Yeah. And you know what? The thing is too, not everybody is the same. Mm-hmm. Like one kid might be one way, and one kid might be another kid or another way. So maybe this one needs less authoritarianism, but this one needs more authority. And that's a hard thing to balance. It's a hard thing to balance. And I feel like when it's your kid, they'll doubt you less, at least. Mm-hmm. When it's not your blood, sometimes it's easier for them to doubt you because anybody else can also tell them the same thing. That's not your parent. You know what I mean? So it's like, I'm not saying that it can't work because there's been some beautiful stories where it works. It's just it's an each individual situation has its own circumstances. You can't even go by this one went this way, so I got to copy this way. Yeah. You're in your own circumstances, personally, in my opinion of it, and your own situation, and you need to logically assess your situation because just because this is the same situation here doesn't mean the parties involved are the same. They're not. Everybody's different. Everybody has their own personality. Everybody has their own DNA. Everybody has their own reactiveness. We're not all the same, and it does not do with skin color or culture or anything. We're not all the same because we each have our individual brain. Yeah. We each have our individual way of assessing and thinking things. Mm-hmm. And so, some of us are more teachable than others.
How do you feel like, me playing sports all my life, and I fought professionally as an MMA fighter. How do you think like that helped you out as far as guiding you and giving you character?
And that was everything. Yeah. That was everything. I think it made me an adult. I think it made me an adult. I was very confused. To this day, I don't have any guy skills except I know how to fight. I didn't have a father, and I didn't have a good relationship with my mother's husband. And by the time I moved in with my grandparents, where I would have had a male figure teaching me things, I don't want to hear it. Yeah. I was not listening. I was not paying attention.
Well, you didn't even get the opportunity because he sat you down on the curb.
Yeah, and then at that moment, he sat me down on the curb because he was just so happy that I wasn't in the street, going around and possibly gangbanging. You know what I mean? So he was just like, you know what? He's here. He's in front of me. Like he's happy. True. And I wasn't taking it in. So to this day, I can't even change a tire. I can't do anything. You know what I mean? Like I tell people, like, you know, it's not an excuse. I could still go learn, but I never learned those things because the male figure was not there. So, you know, it's everybody makes like this whole independent woman's movement. We don't need a man. You need a man to be two parents, because kids should be raised by two parents. Because there's things the father can teach and there's things a mother will teach, 100%. And they're both necessary to create a capable adult. I don't understand that now. You know what I mean? I understand that having been through it. You know, I understand because certain things are missing where I'm like, it's missing because of that was what was lacking when I was growing up. You know what I mean?
Did you get any of that in the boxing, like in a gym? I
got it in boxing in the disciplinary form, where basically understanding if you don't apply yourself here, you're gonna get your ass whipped. You know what I mean? So not accomplishing the goal or accomplishing the goal is bearing on how disciplined you want to be. How do you approach this? How good do you want to be? How successful do you want to be? Once I decided, I left in Madison Square Garden the night of Hamed Kelly, and I said, I want to do this. This is gonna be me. I've got to feel this. Well, I was going 100, man. That was it. That's all I saw was boxing. So bad days, good days, everything. If you kick my ass, I'm like, man, I've got it. And you kick my ass a couple times, I'm like, man, I've got to beat you. What am I doing wrong? What am I doing this? Luckily for me, I was in a great gym. Gleason's gym at that time was a major factor. Now Gleason's gym is more like it's in a yuppie-ish area, very upscale. But at the time, it was in ghetto area. Still in the same area, just the area changed, you know? It got gentrified. But at that time, it was hardcore fighters were there. You know, he created over 100 world champions in its history, you know? And so I was blessed enough to have learned to box in that gym where the competition was so thick, man. You know, like, you couldn't go in there and just play around and you were going to get your ass whooped. So any pretenders got run right out of there, you know? And I was determined not to be a pretender. I saw a lot of guys go in there with, like, big mouths and, like, coming from, you know, tough guy from the neighborhood. They didn't last 2 days, bro. As soon as you put him in the ring, got their ass whooped, let me see if you come back to him. I could already tell. That guy's never coming back. I already, by a certain point, that guy's never coming back. You know what I mean?
Yeah, the adversity makes, man.
You know, for me, it gave me the understanding. It's a metaphor for life. If you want to succeed, you've got to be prepared. You can't expect rewards unless you put in the proper work and dedication. And boxing taught me that just by, it's a results-based, logical thing. You didn't put in the work in camp. You didn't put in the dedication and the time to learn the things necessary or to be sharp in time for this tournament. And then you get your ass whooped. They're not gonna send you to the nationals because you feel like you participated and you go to the nationals too. No, the guy who wins the tournament goes to the nationals. You know what I mean? And then the guy who wins the nationals gets a spot in the Olympic trials and has a chance to qualify for the Olympics. And even if he wins the nationals, just because he showed up at the Olympic trials, if he gets beat, they're not gonna say, "Oh, but he was a national champion. He should go to the Olympics." No, it doesn't work that way. It doesn't mean shit. You have to earn it every time. So, metaphorically, it was the perfect avenue to teach me life that I hadn't had before. That I didn't want to learn before. Not that I hadn't had it before, because like I said, my grandfather was a great example. I had lived with him for a year at that when I started boxing, but now I saw it playing out. Now I saw it playing out in front of my face. You know what I'm saying? And I saw it playing out with me. If I wasn't getting better, I was gonna have a problem. So the need to continuously improve, the need to continuously get better results I was obsessing over it, and the only way I could do that is working very, very hard. I would come home, watch a bunch of tapes. I had a trainer, had a bunch of VHS tapes of old fights and stuff like that. Well, I would borrow them and come home and watch them all, you know what I mean? And then I'd just live it. I would just live it, and go in there and I would see things I liked and maybe try to practice them the next day. Whatever worked, I took it. Whatever didn't work, I'll throw it out, because not everything that works. You can't copy every single thing a fighter does, but some things will work for you, some things don't.
And I've gone through
but it would stay in my mind.
And for me, I would always look at different fighters and it's funny, man, because I trained some of the guys that I used to emulate throughout my career, and I've always go through these spurts. Okay, I want to be able to jab like this person. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I will go through that too. I will go through that too. I wanted to learn this little thing about and see how much of it I got put into my arsenal. You know.
What was some of the fighters that you used to imitate a little bit, or just watch?
It's funny because my favorite fighter was Arturo Gatti, but I fought nothing like him. Arturo Gatti was my favorite fighter because he had an Italian family like me. And they moved from Italy when he was a kid, to Canada. The only difference was he went to Montreal and my family went to New York. But Arturo, I hear different stories. He's either born in Montreal to Italian parents, or he was born in Italy but came here young to Montreal and still was raised in an Italian community in Canada and then started boxing. So that was like, I was like, wow, this guy's like me. You know what I mean? And he became world champion, Then stylistically we fought nothing alike, but but I liked that there was a story. I liked that I could look at somebody and he's like me and he was successful, and I'm like, or I'm like him. I'm like, wow, it's like, all that stuff. So I love that. Yeah. But then I started noticing, the fighters that I wanted to copy. I started realizing I was basing my whole style on my athleticism. Sure. So I started watching, I loved Ali. I watched all Muhammad Ali fights, Sugar Ray Leonard fight. I watched some Sugar Ray Robinson, but a lot of Sugar Ray Leonard. I loved Meldrick Taylor when I learned, when I learned about Meldrick Taylor more, when I got my hands on some Meldrick Taylor tapes. Just all speed guys, Yep. I used to watch Floyd Mayweather and record the fight off HBO because at the time Floyd Mayweather was just becoming world champion, and I was right when I was starting boxing, So I would watch a lot of Floyd Mayweather. I remember a lot of times I would have like a fight at nighttime, and I'd watch a Floyd Mayweather fight that day just to have it fresh in my brain. But it was early. It was early Floyd. It was early Floyd. It was like a Pretty Boy Floyd. It was Pretty Boy Floyd. It was like a 130-pound world champion Floyd. When he beat Gennaro Hernandez. So if I was fighting a tall guy, for example, I'd watch Floyd against Gennaro Hernandez and Floyd against Diego Corrales because they were both tall guys. Then when he went to lightweight, he fought Philip Endo. I'd watch that fight too. If I was fighting a short guy, I'd watch Floyd against Jesus Chavez or Goya Vargas. I still remember those fights. Also Carlos Arena. I felt like the fight with Carlos Arena was a little taller. He was so sharp that fight. Those fights were. I can remember all of them because I watched them like a million times each. Because that was right around my learning phase. And then so those were basically speed guys, guys that I wanted to emulate their. I felt like I had enough speed that if I was smart enough, I could emulate them in some way, and obviously their intelligence. It was very smart.
You always said that, your jab is probably the best in the game, right? I think that your speed and your athleticism, like you talked about, and you joke a little bit like you got one hand basically, right? Yeah. Why do you think that? Do you think that was just there, or is it like? Did you never really try to get it going?
I had a lot of hand problems. I've had 4 surgeries on my right hand, and one of the times I shattered my right hand. It took 9 hours. This took 9 hours. Mm-hmm. This took 9 hours to build my hand back together. A 9-hour surgery, totally shattered on me. So after this surgery, especially, I remember my career was in jeopardy, and I remember thinking, "Wow, I was like, nobody's even gonna know my name ever." And I'm gonna be one of those guys in the cafe, just being like, "I should have been a champion," and people look at me like I'm a jerk off because there's a lot of guys who coulda, woulda, shoulda. Some guys are full of shit, and some guys really are coulda, shoulda, woulda. But you don't know who's telling the truth and who's not because they're 60 and you're 20. You weren't around. So I was like, wow, I'm gonna be like those guys, man. I was like, this sucks. I used to cry, man. I used to be like, man, I just put in all this work, a bunch of, it was half a decade here, and now I'm it's gonna fall apart because of this injury. And luckily, I found a very good doctor, Dr. Stephen Margles, who was out of Boston, and he put my hand together, man, and it survived. It's always delicate, but at least it was able to be functioning.
Sure,
and
was there anything that you did after the fact when you got the surgery to strengthen it up?
I would try everything, bro. Everybody had all ideas. The rice bags, the take the whole newspaper and crumple it, go through the whole newspaper, the grip thing, but bro, everything. You got to do fist push-ups. Yeah, we did those too. We did everything. We did everything. We did the ice water, the ice buckets, and the Epsom salt bucket. We did everything. There's nothing we didn't do. Unfortunately, my hands were probably made to play piano, not fight, but I became a fighter, So it was it made my jab good, but I felt like I always had a good jab because I always used to, like I said, one of the first people I used to watch to imitate was Ali. He had always a great jab, right? So I always felt like I base it off my jab, and also I'm born left-handed, but in Italy at the time, because after 7 months I was back in Italy. At the time in Italy, especially southern Italy, where it's super old school, superstitious, and just very not educated. In southern Italy, it was bad luck if you had a lefty, So my father, it's funny because my mother's a lefty. I guess my grandparents didn't care, you know. But my father was like always switching me around. So it's funny, anything, because at the time when I was learning, my father was still around the first 6 years of my life. Any sports I did outside, throw a ball or kick a ball, he made me dominate more with the right,
Gotcha.
because he wanted me to be righty. In the house, my mother just let me do what I wanted with whatever hand I wanted to use. So I eat left-handed, I brush my teeth left-handed. I do some other things left-handed. We're not going to talk about it. but outside, I do everything right-handed. You know, I throw a ball right-handed, I fight right-handed, I baseball bat right-handed, hockey stick right-handed, shoot a basketball right-handed.
Funny, bro. I'm the exact opposite.
Really?
Like I write with my right, eat with my right, brush my teeth, but I do everything left from southpaw too.
Oh wow.
Yeah,
Okay. But you're converted then. You're a converted right-hander.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah. It's like Sports Patafora was like that. Zab Judah's like that. You know, there's a lot of guys. Chad Dawson's like that. You know, some guys just convert. It's funny. The only thing inside the house my mother wanted me to switch was writing, because she said lefties cover their work. So she made me write with my right hand. So I write right-handed, because she said the only reason she made me do that is because lefties cover their work. You know, but everything else inside the house I do left-handed. You know, so I guess maybe a benefit, the fact that I'm naturally a born lefty helped me with my jab. You know, because my jab is a left hand, my left hand. You know,
True. Yeah, that's cool. So like, all right, now let's fast forward a little bit. World champion, titles, all that. You've done what you've done in boxing, hands down. Obviously, Hall of Famer in my mind, like, you know what I mean, and all that. But then you decided to transition a little bit. You did a little bit of bare knuckle with the hand.
Yeah, and people always said it's a bad idea. People say, "Yo, you're the last guy that should be doing this." Yeah. And I'm like, I saw these guys fighting bare knuckle, and I'm like, this is easy though, man. I can outskill these guys, you know. And I remember it was 5 2-minute rounds. I remember thinking, how much damage is my hand's gonna take in 5 2-minute rounds? And I'm like, come on, man, whatever. You know, it's a 10-minute fight. It's gonna be a breeze, man. I'm used to fighting 36 minutes or even 10 rounds a half hour. Imagine doing a 5-round fight and getting paid like you're fighting a 12-rounder. You know, because they were offering me, you know, good money for that. At that time in my career, I wouldn't have been able to make that kind of money boxing anymore. And I hadn't made that kind of money boxing in years. You know, so I was like, it's a no-brainer, man. And this guy can't fight, so I'm like, in my mind, I'm like, it's gonna be an easy fight, you know. So I had a built-in storyline, you know, so it was a very sellable fight. So I was like, you know what, this could get really exciting, you know. Like I kind of missed it. I kind of missed, because even at the end of my career, I was fighting, but I wasn't in major fights anymore. Like the last couple of years of my career, I was trying to build back to major, but I failed at it. You know, you get older and you fall apart. So I'm like, man, I miss like being the center of attention of a big promotion. Like this could be it right here, man. Like, this could bring it back. You know, like it's a built-in beef, like press conferences where you gotta be witty and like you know, you gotta be sharp-tongued. And I like, you know, test my mindset, see if I can be sharp-tongued. You know,
back in it,
so they got me, man. I was like, yo, I can't say no to this, man. I gotta do it, you know. And I remember people like, are you crazy? This and that. And some people, you know, people that care about me, like, when are you gonna stop fighting? You gotta keep fighting. You can't be fighting forever. And I'm like, man, this is not even risking. Come on, man. And so we did it. we did the fight.
It's funny because like I work with a couple of bare knuckle guys. It's different. Like I was there, I was cornering them, you know, and it's way different in my opinion. Like I've cornered Sullivan Barrera for major boxing events. Obviously, I corner a lot of MMA fights, but bare knuckle is a lot different. It's a little bit more eerie. Like
it is, because it's eerie because the cuts is more blood. I feel like it's safer though. I feel like you're not getting as much brain damage because guys can't load up heavy shots. You know, so I feel like
when I was in the corner of like
gory though.
Yeah, for sure. That the cuts and the lacerations, like one, if you don't like blood, you shouldn't be even in the corner.
But it's safe. Nobody's gonna wind up in a coma. I feel like. You know what I'm saying? Like it's like, because you can't have that high impact continuously, because the other guy's gonna hurt himself if he keeps high impact punching you know. So I felt like it's safe, but it's cutting. You know, you're not gonna be a model, that's for sure, because you're gonna have a lot of scar tissue and you're gonna have a lot of cuts.
And like the as far as like finding the distance and just different feeling, you know, and all that.
It's funny because growing up, I got into a lot of fights, right? Even before I was boxing, I was always a smaller kid. I had to get into fights. So, and even after I started boxing, honestly, bro, when I was in nightclubs, there were times I got into fist fights in nightclubs. So I was still in fist fights into my 20s, into my 20s, even early 30s actually. So actually, it's funny enough, I got into a fist fight 2 years ago on the subway. Randomly. Some guy just punched me in my face randomly,
Wow,
bro. Yeah.
what
I mean, it was
the hell,
the worst idea for him in the end, but I mean, it was randomly.
Do you have a reasoning behind it, or was it just
I'll tell you that one after this. I'll tell you after. Let me go through this first. So I now I'm thinking about this, but I can't believe that even happened. So with the bare knuckle fight, it is different. But I still felt like I still felt like you could control the action. If you're good, you can still control the action like a boxing match. Even with one hand, I was so much better than that guy that I still made it a boxing match. Even with one hand, it did not turn into a brawl.
No.
It did not turn into your typical bare knuckle fight.
You're right. Yeah.
So two-handed, I would have absolutely wrecked him, because it's funny, the right hand that I landed, I broke my hand and I had to stop using my right hand, was because I was finally starting to find a distance. It takes you a round and a half to find your distance, set your distance, even in a regular boxing match. So I was starting to find that range, in that second round. I won the first round just on controlling him, but I felt like in the second round I was starting to find that range. I landed the right hand to the stomach. I felt like I was starting to throw the right hand a little more. I was starting to find that range. So it was going to start to come out harder and more often. And I was controlling him. He couldn't close that gap, because I got my quick feet. 5 2-minute rounds, you don't going to burn out your legs even as an old man, right? And I threw a hard shot because I realized I couldn't miss it. I set a trap once, I set a trap twice, and he didn't bite. And I'm like, he bit perfectly on it. He didn't bite the way he's supposed to react. So I'm like, this guy, I can rip him. So basically what I did was I shot a jab to the stomach. Usually, if I shoot that jab to your stomach at center ring, you take a step back. You take a step back because you want to limit the impact, right? So you'll kind of ride with the shot. You'll take a step back. You can't do that if you're on the ropes, but you can take a step back at center ring. If you're on the ropes and I shoot that jab to your stomach, I'm gonna drive it in good, because you can't ride with the shot.
People don't know the ropes
are not really ropes. They're covered looking like ropes. They're steel. So either way, I felt like at center ring, I threw a couple of jabs to something, and he didn't react to it. I was like, this guy sucks. I'm like, he's supposed to be trying to ride with this, and he doesn't have the presence of mind to ride with this. So I said, you know what, bro? Next one I shoot, I'm going to sell it down, and I'm going to come with a hard-ass right hand to his head, because usually that trap, I need you on the ropes so you're going to ride back. Because if you ride back and I shoot this and I come up, because you're riding back with the jab, I'm going to miss you with the right hand, or I'm not going to land with all of it, But if I set that trap on the ropes, you got to know where to go. I'm going to shoot here, and if I sell it down and your eyes come down, I'm going to shoot you up. So it's usually a trap I set when you're on the ropes. This guy sucks so bad that I was like, I realized after throwing a couple of jabs to someone, I can set this trap right here in the center ring. He sucks. And sure enough, that's what I did. The problem is, you have to sell it with your eyes, because if you look up, he's gonna know something's coming to his head. So you shoot a jab to the chest area, to the stomach area, and you commit your eyes to it. So that this way, the shot to the head up top afterwards, right, it follows it. He doesn't see it. He doesn't anticipate it. He doesn't anything. And that's what I did, except by looking down, I know your head is here. With boxing gloves, as long as I land on something, it's okay. But with bare knuckle, you got to be more accurate. I shot the shot high without looking, and I shot it too high. I don't even know to this day if he stepped in, because he might be dumb enough to have stepped into it too. And if he stepped in, he cut the gap and got on his forehead. But I hit him in his forehead, and it broke my hand. And so, in a moment where I was starting to find the distance for the right hand.
You hit it with the crown.
I hit him here. I remember he had a cut here, so he got up high, but it was on his forehead. So either way, now I got a broken hand. Right at the moment where I'm starting to find that distance, where I would have probably started beating the life out of this guy, And I said to honestly, I had fought one-handed fights before in boxing and controlled the action with the jab. So at this point in my life, it wasn't even like a panic, because I felt like I was so much better than him. I didn't even tell my corner. I went back to second, and if you go back, they're going back and forth, so you can't tell. But if you would see my whole corner, between 2 and 3 and 3 and 4, I didn't even tell my corner. I felt like I was in so much control. I didn't even tell my corner my hand's broken. Because I know my hand's broken so many times that I know the kind of pain when my hand's broken and the kind of pain when my hand's just hurting and it's not broken. I can tell the two different kinds of pain. I've broken my hand that many times that I can tell the difference. So I remember between 4 and 5, my trainer's like, all right, let's finish strong. This and that. We all thought we were winning. So let's finish strong. Let's make a statement. And that's when I told him. Between 4 and 5, I'm like, my right hand's broken, bro. And he's like, and my boy's right here. He's like, I'm like, yeah, my right hand's broke. I broke that shit around too. and he's like,
lead hooks, maybe?
Yeah, they were like, all right, whatever. We thought we were winning anyway, so we were like, whatever. And, you know, it's funny because by round 5, my left hand was hurting a lot because I used only my left hand. Yeah. So, you know what I said? Oh, if I have 2 minute rounds, how much can my hands hurt? Yo, my hands were killing me. So, if round 5, I don't have a really active round. So, it's just close, whatever. But
well, you're so accurate, too.
Mm-hmm. No, I still outlanded him. Even round 5, I outlanded him. I mean, I outlanded him, I think, in every round.
What I'm saying, though, is that, remember, you have nothing on your hands. And you're so accurate, so it's repeated.
No, I was banging them off. I don't think I missed a jab all night. I don't think I missed a jab all night. You know, and they would rush in. I would just check hook them. You know, I just made it tactical because I can no longer beat the life out of you if I got one hand.
Sure.
And I also, you have to understand, people like exchanges. The uneducated eye only understands exchanges. The educated eye understands tactics.
Sure.
And I could drive to you with 2 hands, but with 1 hand, I cannot get into an exchange because it's simple logic. 1 hand will always lose to 2 hands when you get into exchange. A one-handed exchange versus 2-handed exchange, I'm going to lose every exchange. So now I've got to fight a fight where I'm picking you off, and I've got to fight a fight where we're not engaging anymore, where I'm picking you off and in the pocket, picking you. And I can do that because I got so much better legs than him. So that's basically the approach I took after I broke my hand. I didn't think it was even that far-fetched. I thought it was so winning.
Do you think it was... You're almost too skillful.
No, they told me that. People told me before the fight, I'm warning you. They said, I'm warning you. You got to fight. He goes, you got to dumb your style down because you're gonna have to dumb. And I'm like, I'm gonna stop him anyway. I still believe with 2 hands I would have stopped him. But I'm like, you gotta dumb your style. And it's funny because when I broke my hand and I had to now IQ my style up because I got 1 hand. Yeah. I didn't think about everybody who had said dumb your style down because I didn't expect to have to dumb anything down. I just expected to beat the life out of them. So now, when I've got to 1 hand, you're either gonna quit or you're gonna make it very tactical. Yeah. So I had to not only not dumb my style down, I had to IQ my style up. And when you got 3 mentally retarded person on the side judging the fight, you got a problem when you IQ your style up, you know?
That's in every, I think it's almost in every combat sport, man, the judging is
No, it is.
Terrible.
It is. But I feel like, I mean, I don't know, this is my personal perception. I feel like the MMA community was always against me after the McGregor beef I had. So, and that night...
I'll tell you this, you're not in the wrong now. People probably seeing it now.
I mean, people should have used logic when you never saw it. I mean, what would it have taken to really see the spar? I mean, everybody made a big stink about it. Just show it. Yeah. Especially him. Yeah. He's very vain. If he would have beat me up, he would have showed it to you because he's very vain. You know.
Was that like the whole? I think was that the whole thing? Like he wanted just to bring you in, just to be like, oh, I can beat him up or something.
I don't know. Honestly, I don't know. He's a good salesman though, so I don't know. I'm, you know. I mean,
talking about Conor McGregor, by the way.
Now, and with everything now, with hindsight 2020, and you see like what a salesman he is, and he does this like he does it even after his own fights. You look at Dustin Poirier beat the life out of him, and he put a highlight clip of him hitting Dustin Poirier on his Instagram. I saw it. I had a comment on it. I'm usually don't troll, but I'm like, bro, you're a clown, bro. Yeah. This guy just knocked you out, and you're putting a highlight reel of you. So
shout out to DP, by the way.
Shout out to Poirier, good guy. So I mean. He can't help himself, and this is a fight where people saw. So I'm like, this guy's, you know. So he's a good salesman, with no backbone, no morals. You know, he's got no character. As soon as the fight gets tough, he quits. When I told people that because I saw it in sparring, and I went to camp knowing that because he had already quit against Nate Diaz right before that fight. So I already kind of went into camp knowing this guy has no character. So even if I'm not in shape, I'm gonna push him and bring out the fold in him. That's the only reason I went 12 rounds, bro. Yeah. Wow, I'm out of shape. How did I go 12 rounds out of shape? You know what I'm saying? Like because I'm forcing him, and he's going into a shell because I'm bossing him in the sparring. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. And then I got tired. How am I going to go 12 rounds if I can't control the pace in that kind of shape? And if you're beating me up, everybody knows you got to be in shape to give a beating for 12 rounds, but you got to be in even better shape to take a beating for 12 rounds. How the hell did I do 12 rounds if I got beat up? Yeah. And everybody knows I wasn't training, and the whole world knows that. So how the hell did I do 12 rounds unless I was controlling the action? You know, so. Regardless of that, when it came to the judges, I felt like so much had been said about boxing, MMA, and had just, you know, a lot of quotes have been attributed to me that I said in the moment. You know, like MMA fans are dumb, and I really don't think that's smart, honestly, because it's more of a culture where it's like blood fighting, and you don't actually understand and get to. Don't get me wrong, the MMA fans that actually do the stuff, you know, they do jiu-jitsu and they understand the tactics of it. But your average person that's an MMA fan is a moron, you know, and so because now you've got to understand a lot more. You've got to understand striking, you've got to understand ground fighting, you got to understand it. So now you're dealing with higher level morons, because it's one thing if you feel like you're an expert of one aspect of it, like boxing, and you don't know anything. But now you think you're an expert of this sport, where it takes like five different knowledges of different combats to understand it, and and an idiot that thinks he's smart is always the most dangerous kind of idiot. Remember that? Somebody told me that a long time ago. An idiot that thinks they're smart is the most dangerous kind of idiot. So you got people that are like that. And so when it came to, I feel like by the time we got to that, I feel like a lot of the MMA community had just railed against me. And it's funny because I didn't find out it was going to be MMA judges until the night of the fight. I went to the back. I was getting my hands wrapped, and they told me, like, yo, you got to take a picture for your license. And I'm like, I think I was licensed or something. I think I'm licensed. And they were like, no, it's got to be an MMA license. We didn't know. Somebody told me we didn't know, because it's technically, this is MMA. Yeah. I should have realized right there that it's going to be MMA judges, but in the moment I'm there, or whatever. But looking back now, when I didn't get the decision, I'm like,
that makes sense.
Yo, that was MMA judges. That's why he was came back and told me that, you know.
It's terrible.
So I was like, whatever. And when I looking back, that's ended up how it went. And yeah, I broke my hand. Everybody was right. I broke my hand. If I could go back, I wouldn't load up that shot.
I was thinking about, because I think Maureen knows you from way back.
Way back,
and I remember her telling me,
we were amateurs.
Why is he doing that? Why is he doing that? And I'm like, I mean, I would take it, you know what I'm saying? Because you're better than him. But
and like I said, I've been in street fights. I've been in so it's like, I don't know, man. I felt like this is a street fight, but I'm the more versatile fighter, So, and I still felt like in the fight, I still felt like I showed that you can make even a bare knuckle fight into a skill fight. I still felt. Don't get me wrong. I probably didn't have much in front of me. Mm-hmm. Respect to all of. He was in there. He did it. Yeah. But not with all real talk. There probably wasn't much in front of me, so I was able to make it very tactical. Yeah. I don't know if maybe with a better skilled person, it's going to become more engaging.
Yeah. I feel like that kind of stifles a lot of great fighters, like really skillful fighters. Mm-hmm. If they're in there with a guy that's just like, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, but you know what stunts the crazy guy, bro? The sharp, straight shots, bro. You show up a couple of straight shots, and now all of a sudden what happened? You strafe for a couple of sharp, straight shots. All of a sudden now he just wants to still come. He's not going to be stopped. But all of a sudden now you feint one. Yeah. And he's reacting to the feint. So he's tough. He'll take it. But obviously if he's reacting to your feints, he doesn't like it. Yeah. So now you break him with the feints and pum, and you break him with the feints. And all of a sudden, before you know it, a minute and a half into the fight, you've now made it your pace. Nice. That's it. Now you've made it your pace.
So I like that.
But you've got to get through that initial fire, sure. You got to get through that initial fire. But you can.
I see that a lot with the beginner level MMA guys. I see that a lot, and I see it a lot with boxers too. Like guys,
you got to be high level boxing to do that though. You got to be real high level
boxing. That's true too.
So and you don't get that a lot in bare knuckle, and even the boxers that come in. Yep. A lot of them are bangers. Like that went. He had a nice career in bare knuckle, but that as a boxer was just a guy who engaged. You know what I'm saying? So he didn't have that, and it's not a knock on that. He didn't have the cerebralness to him, but he had a more aggressive approach. But in bare knuckle, that's kind of a lot of the ticket to success, and it's a lot of the ticket to what the fans want to see. A
couple of fights I want to ask you about. Mm-hmm. Anthony Joshua fight. Mm-hmm. What do you think about that?
The Anthony Joshua fight, I felt like, going into the fight, I felt like Joshua was going to win the fight. I felt like he's bigger, and although Usyk is probably the more complete fighter, I felt like it was going to be simply a case of a less good big man but still solid, being too big and too good, too strong for a very excellent smaller man, because Josh was still world class. I just felt like Usyk was more skilled, but the size was going to play a difference, and Joshua was going to eventually get to him. And so when Usyk started out well, I can't say I was shocked, because usually this is what happens when a smaller guy, takes on a bigger guy, sort of in the classic Joe Louis, Billy Conn type of fight, where the little guy has early success, but eventually over the long haul, the big guy's physicality and the big guy's harder, heavier shots eventually break him down, and he ends up getting stopped. Yeah. And there was a point in the fight where Joshua started going to the body a little bit. I remember started going to the stomach with the uppercut on the counter, because Usyk, when you have a southpaw in front of you, you can rip little short uppercuts on to the gut and even to the head, right?
Yeah.
There's a different kind of tunnel there. I call it like a tunnel there. The southpaw can do the same to a right-hander. Just the opposite stances, they give you this target. And I remember Josh was starting to target that more and more. And I remember thinking he should have started this earlier, man, because this could slow Usyk down. And I remember thinking this is maybe the way he's going to turn it around a little bit. And it probably started too late because I felt like he had some success with it.
Was it the 9th or 10th?
Yeah, it started like around 8th, 9th, 10th, somewhere around there. I mean, he did it for a little while, and then Usyk started attacking again, like aggressive again, and I think Joshua just went away from it and started realizing, let me just get through the fight, you know?
Almost looked like he was like a little bit apprehensive.
He was apprehensive, but you got to understand the change of distance Usyk's giving you. Like, look at me and you. We're at the distance right now. Maybe somebody's 20 rows away, or even on TV watching for it. Look like if we stand right in front of each other with our guard up, and we don't move from here, we're not in range to punch. None of us is going to throw a punch. Somebody's got to close that gap.
Yeah.
But from far away, it's like, it look like, oh man, why did you just throw a punch? But that last 6 to 8 inches is not easy to close when it's confusing. When you got a guy feinting, jumping in and jumping out, changing levels on you, dropping lower, and then in between, he's sometimes punching and sometimes not punching. Off those level changes, off those in and out changes, off the angle changes. He'd spin out to the right eye as a southpaw. You put all that into it, and then you mix in he's punching in between that. Sometimes he's not punching. So you got to guess when he's punching, not punching. You got to guess when you try to time him. But if you try to time him when he's coming with a shot, maybe you'd miss time and then he's going to hit you with the shot. You got to do all that. And and Usyk was touching Joshua. And he touched him enough to where now Joshua's second guessing when Usyk is in and out. Now Joshua's second guessing when he's in and out. And he wants to, but again, I felt like targeting the body midway point was pretty smart. Just he should have started that earlier, I feel like maybe he could have slowed him down a little bit.
As far as the shorter fighter to taller fighter, you think that's the way to go? How Usyk did what he did?
But you gotta have good legs. You have to disguise your entry. Distance is everything. Everybody always tells me, well, how did you have a successful combat sports career without having a lot of knockouts, a lot of power? I knew the distance I wanted to fight at, and if I can measure fighting at my distance, I can control with the punches I want to throw, and not let you dictate what punches you want to throw. Sure. So it's the same thing here. These two guys are fighting, and you got to measure the distance. And as a shorter fighter, you got to disguise your entry because you got to make more effort to come in. You're the shorter guy. So there's a lot of disguises, changing levels, feints, dropping, feints to the top, feints with your feet, angle off, not coming from the front door. Sometimes come in through the front door, sometimes come in from the side door. And you have to have a variation enough of it to where not only is it not confusing, but you also have to be punching in between all that just enough. Not all the time, because if you punch all the time, then you're gonna be able to be timed. But if you sometimes punch something, you're not punching. Sometimes you jump in and you jump out, you didn't punch, and then he punches, and now you're on the way out, and now you counter him instead. And so you do all that, but it's got to be mixed enough, and it's a feeling you have. As a fighter, it's a feeling you have. You just start to get this feeling like, okay, I got this rhythm, and he's not understanding it, and I'm in this feeling now, and I felt like Usyk found that rhythm, that feeling, and Joshua just couldn't figure it out, And it's funny because people were talking about the Woodley and Jake Paul fight in the same way. Just Paul didn't have the experience as a stand-up fighter to have all these deceptions closing the gap. People are like, oh, why didn't Woodley throw punches? When he did well. Because, again, cutting the gap, he's a smaller guy. Jake Paul is pretty heavy-handed. You kind of cut the gap, you got to do it right. You may do it wrong, and you got to do it wrong one time, and it's good night, against a bigger guy like that. So Woodley was right on the doorstep, but he couldn't close that last gap to throw more punches because, it's not easy. Maybe to you on TV, but closing that last gap is everything. It's the be-all, end-all. It makes the big difference, but it also makes the big difference, and now you might get hit on the chin, and it's good night, So Woodley couldn't figure it out because Woodley was also, you can't blame him, he's not experienced enough in the boxing aspect of stand-up fighting. Even in the cage, he was a wrestler, right? That's where he specialized more in. So when people think, oh, he didn't throw a punch, the most difficult thing to do is to close the last 6 to 8 inches. It's the most difficult when you're a shorter guy. That is where it all is. And you have to have several deceptions, not just one deception, because one deception, a good fighter will start to catch on to it. You have to have various deceptions that you use in a variation of ways. And then you're able to punch off all of those deceptions. And if you're not able to, if you don't have the experience, it ends up being what Woodley and Jake Paul had. Woodley, if he was able to do that, I think he had Jake Paul psychologically beat. He had him backing up, he had him hesitating, but he let him back in the fight because he was able to oxygenate and throw his shots when he wanted to. With a guy like Usyk, who's an Olympic gold medalist, has enough experience, he has plenty of deceptions. He understands this. This is what he does, And so it was same kind of problem, but solved.
Sure.
With Woodley, he doesn't have the experience to understand the solution to that kind of problem. He may not have the solution even in a rematch. If they do a rematch, I don't know, you know? But it's also something that you can't hold against him. I mean, this is why Jake Paul fights guys who aren't boxers. You know, this is why it is.
He's got, like, I've been able to watch a couple of sparring matches with Jake, and I'm close with T-Wood. Like, I've trained him a couple times, but I knew that was going to be an issue. Like, there's a straight right. He's got a good straight right. Like,
he's got nice punches.
It's not bad.
But it's that gap.
Sure.
Because again, if I'm here and you're here, look, I'm not gonna throw a punch at you at this distance. I have to negotiate distance somehow, and you're not gonna throw a punch at me from this distance. You know, you got to negotiate the last half a foot. So somebody's got to negotiate that. You know what I'm saying? And negotiating that last distance is all the difference between punch landing and punch not landing. You missing and getting countered if you throw it, or you missing altogether in general. You know what I'm saying? Like so the entire fight is there. Distance is the entire fight.
That makes sense. Listen, I don't want to keep you anymore.
Okay.
But this was fucking awesome.
Yeah.
By the way, we keep going. Maybe next time, right?
All right.
And you're in Florida, so
yeah, I'm here.
I appreciate you, bro.
No, man, that was a pleasure.
Also, if you have anything that you want to plug.
Well, I'm doing the celebrity boxing this weekend, October 2nd at James L. Knight Center. Everybody check out the pay-per-view. I think it's on Fight TV or your local pay-per-view. If you're in Miami, come check it out. I mean, don't get me wrong. I commentated one of these shows. It's a zoo. I mean, it's a bunch of characters, but it's a good night out. Honestly, you're gonna have fun. You're not gonna see Mayweather skills type of fights, but it is a fun night if you're looking for a good time and hang out and take your friends out and just chill out, and or just have your friends over and order it. You guys are gonna laugh. There's a lot of characters in these shows, and so check that out. Also, my podcast. I do a podcast right now. At the moment, I've always been switching around podcasts. I got to find a real home, but right now I'm doing a podcast for the Boxer Company, Boxer Promotions. They just got to deal with Sky Sports in the UK, and the podcast I do for them is called Boxer Mouthpiece, BOXXER. And it's on wherever you find your local podcast. It's mainly boxing stuff. And then on my social media, at Paulie Malignaggi, because unfortunately Malignaggi is such a long last name that I couldn't put Paulie, because I was like, it's just too many letters. You know what? People are going to get confused enough. Paulie Malignaggi is where you find me on social media. I run my Instagram, my Twitter not so much because I'll get myself in trouble. So I've got other people running the Twitter. So if you're trying to abuse me on Twitter, I'm probably not going to see it. But on Instagram, I may see it. I'll try to ignore you. That's where you can find me on social medias, and that's it. That's it.
All right, guys. Thanks for watching.
Thank you.